Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's presentation. I went to the fair. Now what? We're talking about the recent job and internship fair at American University. The advice that I provide today will cover any type of employer event that you might attend. So let's say you go to a networking reception at some point during the semester. The same advice will apply there. So I want you to know that it's not just about the job and internship fair, although that's the focus since that's what took place yesterday as I speak today on Thursday, September 29th. I know that people sometimes are a little bit slow to get into a presentation right at the start. I'm gonna pause for just a short bit to allow people to sign on, but in the meantime, I encourage those of you who have specific questions now to enter them either in the Q&A section or in the chat, and I might be answering some of those along the way. I want to make sure that this session serves you and that we help you leave with useful information. Toward that end, this presentation of mine, which will include a PowerPoint, will take a relatively short amount of time. I'm guessing around 15 minutes or so. And then I would like to leave the remainder of the time available for questions. So if you have to leave before 2 p.m., for example, make sure you ask your questions early on, and we'll do our best to answer them earlier in the session so that you can benefit. With that, I will start sharing my screen. So again, my name is John Charles. I am a career advisor in the Career Center here at American University. And I work with students in the School of International Service and the College of Arts and Sciences. In addition, I am a pre-law advisor who helps candidates who are beginning the process of thinking about and applying to law school. For the first 10 years of my career at American University, I worked with the graduate students in the School of International Service. And since then, I guess it's 7 school years now, I've been working both with the SIS students and the College of Arts and Sciences students. So I've enjoyed that opportunity. So let's get started. I went to the job and internship fair. Now what? And here's what we're going to cover. And before we begin, I want to ask you if you would be so kind as to fill out our survey about your experience at the job and internship fair, or JIF for short. The reason why this is important is because we need your feedback so that we can adjust and tailor future fairs to your needs. I got some anecdotal information, such as some people were asking for particular types of employers. They wish that maybe there was something in their field that wasn't there. And that's a constant challenge because, of course, employers will choose themselves whether or not to attend a job and internship fair. And so we try our best to attract those organizations that students would like. Sometimes they come, sometimes they don't. Keep in mind that you can always make inroads to an organization outside of the job fair setting. In my mind, the real benefit of a fair like the ones that we have on campus are that they open up your thinking to organizations that you might not have considered before. And there's always something to discover in addition in the interpersonal interactions that we can have. So that's the way that I see, the main benefits of a job and internship fair like the one we held in person, which was only the second in-person fair we've had since early 2020. So we're very pleased that you were able to attend and that we were able to carry it out. So thank you again for doing that survey. Okay, so now what? We attended the fair. We're thinking about, we're reflecting on the experience and what it was like. So in this little exercise, I ask you, maybe you can jot these things down on your own sheet of paper. What was it that you learned at the fair? What did you take away? Was there something that someone told you, let's say an employer representative, that was helpful? Was there something challenging? Was it difficult for you to give your elevator pitch or the short speech that you give when you're talking about yourself to an employer? Were you overwhelmed by the sheer number of employers and people attending? I know for some people that's a little bit much, right? It's noisy and it can be hard to focus, and we get that, and maybe for some people, a job fair is not the easiest place to interact with employers. So if that's the case, well, lesson learned, and let's think of perhaps some other ways that you can benefit from employer interaction. And I'm going to touch on a couple of those in this session. And finally, what are the next steps, right? And this is what this session is all about. What are the next steps for you? And that leads me into specific things that you can act on. So the most obvious ones is a follow-up to employer representatives who you met at the fair in the form of an email or by connecting on LinkedIn or Alumni Fire, which is a platform that American University has that's focused solely on our American University alumni. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what you might say in a message to an employer. Short, sweet is best, and I'll give you a specific example in a moment. The other next step that I think is really important is to do more research on the organizations you met with or ones that you came across that maybe you didn't know about, and just to see what they have to offer and whether or not it might have that you might have a future with one of them. The other concrete step I encourage you to take, and I know, for some people, keeping track of information can be a challenge and it can feel onerous. It can feel like, oh gosh, yet one more thing I have to do in my busy life. But I do want to convince you today of the importance of using some kind of a spreadsheet, either Excel or Google Sheet, to keep track of a few things, including organizations who you've met with, who you've spoken to, whose representatives you've interacted with, as well as other information related to discussions that you've had. Because what will happen is over time, the details get fuzzy. Even yesterday, I'm trying to think back to yesterday in my own experience, and it's all a blur because our lives are busy. We jump into the next thing as soon as we finish the previous thing. And so I want to encourage you today, if nothing else, let's try to solidify some of the learning that happened at the job and internship fair so that you can use it moving forward. And so one element, as I mentioned, is a spreadsheet. So what do you put in there? Simply the name of an organization, the representative who you met with. Some people might appreciate my Hall & Oates reference in the rep name, Sarah Smile, and then the outcome. So in this case, I left a resume and then a notes. Notes can be also useful. In this case, Ms. Smile told me that hiring will pick up next month. Again, the importance of this information is that you'll remember exactly what you need to take away from those interactions. You'll just be precise in your next steps. You won't be confused. It's down there. It takes a moment to enter it. And once you do, you have everything that you need. In terms of what you can do elsewhere, so LinkedIn, many of you who, if you have met with me, you know that I speak about LinkedIn in every appointment. And the reason I do is because I like I see LinkedIn as a really good hub of organization for any job seeker. It allows you to keep track of people you've met and also just to solidify the the organizations and also just what people look like. I think for me that can be a real challenge. I meet with so many people on a weekly basis. So for me, it's very helpful just to see someone's face so then I can again remember what the interactions were. So I happen to be on this page, I happen to be on the American University alumni tab, which is a good starting point. Many of the employers who are there at the September 28th job and internship fair, as is the case every fair, are American University alumni. And so you can easily find them in this tab, in the alumni tab. Okay, so what else can you or what can you say to the representative in follow-up? So here's something you could do on LinkedIn, but of course you could also do this in an email if you have the business card of the representative. So do your best to remember how the person should be saluted. In this case, Ms., Mr., or first name. Some people are comfortable. They might have told you, call me Susan. And if that's the case, then you can follow that direction. It was a pleasure meeting you at the American University Job and Internship Fair yesterday. In other words, on the 28th. Now, ideally, this message goes soon afterward, right? You want to make sure that you don't leave a long delay in communication. One, so that they can remember you, and two, so that they'll put you in the right context. I wanted to write to thank you for discussing XYZ opportunities with you. I look forward to applying for positions as I near my graduation in May 2023. Best regards, Terry A. So this is just a short message. And again, you might just give a synopsis of what the discussion, what took place in the discussion. Again, you're trying to anchor the memory in the mind of the person. All we're trying to do is just to make them remember you. Really, that's the number one goal here. I didn't have much creativity involved in naming the organization XYZ, but you get the idea there. All right, and then now what else do you do? I have to apologize. I didn't check I had trouble looking at the chat. So I will shortly give you the opportunity to ask the questions, and I look forward to them. So please do ask any and all questions that you have. And then think about what is your next step for connecting with employers. I can tell you that since the pandemic, employers have, how should we put it? They've made a more concerted effort than they did before to create opportunities for candidates to meet with them in different settings. Now, of course, a job and internship fair is an obvious one, but there are other kinds of events that we have, both virtual and in person and hybrid, that have been taking place on campus. Here in fall semester, we've had a few sessions where an employer will come into the Career Center and we'll do a short presentation. Usually we have some students who are attending in person, and then if it's a hybrid event, we'll also be sending it virtually. And that's another nice way that you can connect with employers. Feel free to email me too if you have any specific questions. And please do find me on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to help you connect with employers and with American University alumni. So at that point, I'm going to exit and I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to go to the chat. So thank you for your patience. All right, so here's someone who asked, when would be a good time to follow up after the fair? And that's a great question. Thanks, Fatima. Here's what I would say: as soon as possible. You know how I said that, like, today is the fair is a blur to me because I've moved on to whatever is happening today. The quicker that you can make the contact, the more likely they're going to remember you. And I think that that's just the reality. It's just how our brains are working these days. So try to do it as quickly as you can. And let's see, are there any more questions? Please feel free to raise your hand or just to chat in the chat box if you've got something you want to discuss. What if you don't really remember the name of the recruiter and their pronouns? Fantastic, of course, right? That happens. So the first thing I would do, and I'm glad thanks Dahlia, because I didn't mention the importance of Handshake, right? Handshake is the tool that we use to schedule appointments with us in the Career Center, as well as to provide you event information. You might have noticed when you're looking in your Handshake profile that if you go to a company, very often their representatives are included, like you can find them and you can even message them in Handshake. So that would be my first step. Now, if you don't, we could also probably help you. Maybe, if you're one of my students, or even if you're not, you can message me and I could help you try to figure out who was the representative from ABC or XYZ, right? And I think, that's easy enough. We can solve that without too much trouble. But great, thank you for that question. I know that sometimes it takes a little bit of time to formulate what you ask. One question that I often get is, John, I did what I followed your directions and I contacted the person and they never got back to me. And that's going to be a reality too, right? Many of these recruiters are traveling to fair after fair. They're doing their best to keep up with communication. It's really difficult for them. And so, rather than getting frustrated, we'll just say, hey, that's just the nature of this kind of communication. So one thing that I really like people to try is, let's say, okay, all right, so ABC is your targeted organization. You really like ABC, you like what they do. You want to get a job with them after you graduate. Of course, there's the representative who comes to our job and internship fair, or maybe does a presentation, or comes to some kind of employer event. Remember, though, that there's other people who you can reach out to in the organization. Now, some of these people might not be recruiters. They might be someone I'm contacted with, like, for example, a former student advisee of mine who now works for, what was it again, ABC. And so sometimes it's useful. Then you can ask me for an introduction on LinkedIn and you can say, John, I understand that you know Joe Jones from ABC. Would you be willing to introduce me? And I'm happy to do that. So maybe you can provide a little bit of information about yourself that you'd like me to share with Joe Jones. And then I'll send a message to both you and Joe making the introduction. This can be a highly effective way to get a response, because they're more likely to respond if it's like, oh, it's from John. So if anyone John knows, certainly I'd like to, connect with that person. I mean, I won't pretend that I'm like, the most popular person on the internet, but you get the idea. Whenever you have connections, it helps, right? People are more likely to help when they know you through a certain kind of connection, and you're not just a random person who came into their inbox somehow. So that would be my other recommendation for trying to make inroads into an organization when it feels like maybe you're hitting a roadblock because the original person didn't get back to you. So never here's a good lesson, never let some frustration like that or a lack of communication stop you in your tracks. Use it as, if I can use another metaphor, take another path to try to find another person or more people in the organization. Undoubtedly, there are those people who you can find. So it's just, Sure, it's frustrating when that happens, but don't let it stop you. Just let it divert you onto another path. And I think that's the best bet for you. All right. Oh, thanks so much. We have another question just in time because I was worried that there wouldn't be another question. Here's the question. If the employer is hiring and you want to apply to a position, is it okay to mention in your cover letter that you met one of their recruiters at the job fair? Yes, by all means, mention that. And the reason why it's important to mention that is one, that it gives you some credibility that you actually have this organization on your in your wavelength, right? That you're thinking about them. I think it will only hurt. There's no downside to doing that at all. Sometimes people worry like, oh, am I name dropping? Am I showing off? The answer is no, no, you're not. You are showing your, let me think of a different way of putting it. You're showing that you are actually interested and that you're plugged into their organization. So please please mention the people you know. This could also play out in a slightly different way. Perhaps you have a neighbor or a professor. Often it could be like a professor has recommended an organization to you. And yes, I would encourage you in your cover letter or in an interview, if you get that far, to mention those things. Excellent question. Thanks so much. And definitely do mention those people. All right, I know that we still have plenty of time. And so if you do have additional questions, I encourage you to ask them now. And if not, I will maybe give you one more example of what you can do if you are trying to reach out to an organization. Okay. And what I'm going to do, I apologize for not sharing my screen, but it'll take me a while to get into Handshake to do this. You know how I mentioned a little bit earlier that employers can be messaged on Handshake, and I recommend that you do it if you're inclined to, if you'd like to contact a particular employer. The other thing that's neat to me about Handshake is you can see other students who have already worked at that organization, who have interned, for example. And this is students not just at American University, but all over the country. And I would recommend, if you do find people this way in Handshake, try to find someone who is still in school. The problem with someone who did an internship, let's say a couple years ago and appears to have graduated, is that they might not be accessing their Handshake account. So just to improve chances of getting a response, try to pick people who are still students. And for them, in terms of what you say, it could be very simple. It's like, I saw that you interned at ABC, and I wanted to ask about your experience. Just keep it very simple. And most people, what's really interesting is that most people like to help. The only kind of challenge can be if they don't know exactly how to help. For example, if the request comes to them as, oh, can you help me find a position? For one, that's kind of, it's asking too much for a stranger, right? So what is the right request? It's basically just to ask for information or advice. So information about their experience and advice for someone who is trying to find a position. So keep your request very simple, very clear, and how should we say, don't ask for too much, especially when you first contact someone. And I will tell you confidently that you will likely get useful responses. And when people don't respond, maybe they didn't check their account, keep in mind that it is, as we say, a numbers game, and you're going to have to reach a certain number of people in order to get a certain percentage of responses. So keep that in mind. Try not to let that frustrate you. You know, I know that it's interesting how emotions are such a big deal in a job search. And if you go in with realistic expectations, that's when I think you'll succeed the most. Sometimes it takes numerous messages and outreach to people and different people, and you feels like you're not making any progress, but all you need is really one person who supplies useful information, and then you've succeeded. So just remember that. It doesn't matter if 6 people haven't responded before. All you need is that 7th lucky 7 to respond, and then you're good to go, right? Okay, so that's sort of my my final point. If there are no more questions remaining, then I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this session. And oh, there's another question. Fantastic. What if I don't get to talk to an employer who is at the fair but wanted to? Can I still reach out to them? Yeah, so for example, maybe the line was too long and you just didn't get a chance to talk to the person. I would definitely do that. I would definitely reach out. So you can still reach out. Now, how do you do that? If you're able to find the person's contact information, of course, you could send a message. The other thing you could do is, once again, contact me or one of my colleagues, career advisors. So for those of you, depending on your school, it might be here in the main career center, it might be in the COGOD office or the School of International Service office or the law school, and see if you can ask your advisor to help you track down that person. Maybe set up an appointment. I know with emails, people sometimes are getting a little bit overwhelmed. Just set up an appointment and then meet with the advisor. And then that way you can cover that in the meeting, in addition to getting whatever other information you need or a resume review, cover letter review, that kind of thing. Okay, so that is what I would recommend. Excellent. Well, thanks so much for your participation today. Feel free to contact me again. Charles@american.edu is my email. Find me on LinkedIn and continue to think about ways that you can broaden your experience so that it's not just the one day of the job and internship fair, but it's the connections that you've made and that you're building on them further. There's so much, so much more that you can draw from the experience. And thank you again for filling out the survey. I'm gonna link it one more time here, but that's very helpful for us. Oh, I think we have another question. So I keep trying to wrap up, and it's fine. This is good. We want to answer your questions. So here's the question. If the employer interaction at the fair was lukewarm, should I still reach out afterwards? That's a great question. So in other words, maybe you sense that the employer wasn't so excited about your credentials or your background, your experience. Here's the thing about human behavior and perception. Sometimes we make an assumption and it's not the case, right? So you might think the person was lukewarm, but maybe they just were having a bad day and maybe were low on energy. They didn't get a chance to eat that cookie from their lunch, whatever. So let's not make any assumptions. Let's still move forward. Let's still contact them, still be your exuberant self, and then see how it plays out. Additionally, if one person, sometimes we don't click with one person, but there might be another, in many cases, there were more than one representative from organizations. So maybe reach out to the other person, but try, just give it your best try. That's all you can do. Let them choose not to get back to you. Don't you stop yourself from reaching out to them, is what I'm saying. Okay, great. Well, thank you again all for your wonderful questions. We do want to get as much feedback as we can. That's why I'm pushing the the survey so much to you today, because only from your experiences do we understand what the fair is like, right? We have our own experience and knowledge, but it's different from yours, and yours is valuable. You are the people that we're trying to help. Okay, so we want to make sure that we reach, we meet your needs. Thanks again, everyone. Take care. Look forward to connecting with you in the coming months, and I wish you all the best. Take care.